All right, Jerry, going live on video. Stand by for audio. All right, good day and good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Live the Fuel show. So this evening, I've got a repeat co-host returning to bless your ears and also bless your eyes on YouTube. So this gentleman he's been on. I lost track a few times. We'll have to catch up.
This is number 3.
This is number 3. There you go. So let's catch you up. In case you newer subscribers, okay? So you got a therapist who's turned entrepreneur with a fine arts and philosophy degree. He guides people, though, from every walk of life, from MDs to artists to even shoe salesmen. So he's a lifelong creative and healer, and he's been lucky to parlay his work with innovators into a brand that features interviews with creatives in diverse fields, including New York Times bestselling authors, my favorite here, Navy SEAL commanders, NPR storytellers, world-renowned healers, top podcasters, Forbes business gurus, and so much more.
Mm-hmm.
So without further ado, welcome back to the show, Jerry Gaura, sir.
Thank you so much. And I could use all of that energy because we had a little chat before we got rolling here. And it was me whining about the fact that I was up until about 3 a.m. mixing a show with Navy SEAL Brent Gleason, which was a lot of fun. Yeah. But I had to get up at 5 a.m. So not a whole lot of sleep going on. And in terms of like focus and acuity right now, I'm not at peak, but
well, thank God I bring the energy. So hopefully you can absorb a little over the audio waves and over the internet since we're tied in over Zoom. We're going to Zoom some energy your way.
Yes.
So quick pause on that. This is a great example, ladies and gentlemen, that the hustle never dies, but also you have to respect your circadian rhythm. Rest and recovery is impacted by that.
It is so important.
Yeah.
Do you not? Yeah. I think the fact that I do push limits like that, and know where the boundaries are, it reaffirms the value of key concepts like sleep.
Yeah.
You know, there was time periods in my life, I'm sure you've had time periods like this too, especially in training, where you don't have the benefit of getting sleep, but yet you're still having to perform. I like having choices now of when I can sleep, and being a business owner, I can kind of choose when I sleep and when I push the boundaries. So,
yeah, I will admit, I mean, you and I have talked so many times. I've been on your show. Again, ladies and gentlemen, TOOWI Media, TOOWINEDIA, TOOWImedia.com. But we'll get into that. It's funny because you have that SEALs background, right? Like you went through that training, and I had the firefighting background. It's why we vibed a little bit a few times. We might even one day even officially call it a bromance. I'm not sure. So
I kind of feel like it's close. All we need is a dinner to seal the deal.
We still got to close the deal. Maybe do a little dinner, a little scotch or something. I don't know. Anyway, the point is you've got such a crazy background, a crazy history. And yes, I've pushed it. You've pushed it. It's funny you brought that up. I literally had it because I'm finally working on the book. I don't know if I told you that. And so I'm trying to think up new chapters to include because I already had a decent outline. Mm-hmm. And you just brought up another one, which I have to figure out now how to call it. But you just triggered something because when you said those long hours, right, having to push the envelope. And we used to work 16-hour shifts on the fire line, in the mountains. And I literally flashed back when you said that to – it's nightfall. We're doing night burning operations because it's safer. The sun is not there to help amplify the environment and amplify the fire. It's calmer when there's no sun and there's no wind. But I remember having to stand there, chainsaw on my shoulder, and you're just staring into the dark.
Right.
So the fire is behind you. Like the whole, picture standing on we're actually lucky enough to be on a forest road. So I'm standing on a dirt forest road. Yeah. And everything is glowing behind us because you always turn your back to the fire. It may sound weird to some of the listeners, but you turn your back to the fire, or as we called it, the black, because once it's done burning, it's black. And you look to the green, or you look into the darkness if it's a night operation, because you want to look for any embers flying over the road to potentially make sure it's not going to start another fire in that other side of the road. We're trying to hold the line, right? The road is the line. You can't make sure any of that ember wash ignites potential new dangerous fires on the other side. So anyway, after 16 hours, I remember one time we pulled like a 20 or a 21-hour shift. And I think I actually fell asleep with a chainsaw on my shoulder for a couple of split seconds.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you feel like your balance change and you're like, whoa, and you catch yourself and you wake up, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I remember actually slapping myself in the face to make sure that I got that out of my system.
First off, what a phenomenally cinematic scene you just painted it. I want to produce that.
Oh, there you go.
Secondly, I was having flashbacks like that too. And I like your standing up sleeping story because when I was mixing I've had 2 SEALs on. So I had Mark Devine on and then I had Brent Gleason on.
Huge man, by the way. Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah. Mark Devine, I actually was in the same SEALs class with him. He was in training with me.
I remember you telling me that on a past show. That's like so cool to see like how far you guys have like changed, but coming back together.
He was a freak show then too. Like I remember he was big time. So when SEALs come in, like when you're in training, everybody's just kind of sizing each other up, trying to figure out like,
who's the alpha? Or
right.
To be fair though, you guys are SEALs, or SEAL training, so like everybody's an alpha.
Well, sort of. We were all scared to death, but then there was Mark Devine. I remember, and I talked about this on that show when he came in. There was something different about him. He had a certain readiness that was built in, and it turned out nobody knew at the time, but he had years of meditation training and Zen meditation training, which he brings into his brand now. But anyway,
you would never expect, outsider looking in, until you learn Mark's branding and what he does with SealFit and everything. Never would expect that.
Yeah, unless you know him, because if you don't know his background, but you've been with him, you get a sense that he's much deeper than just his SEALs training. And that's the benefit of what he brings to the community is he's got a deep skill set in terms of, bringing awareness and consciousness to training rather than just the physicality of it. And he's doing it at a pretty high level now. He's bringing it back to the government. But anyway, what I was going to riff on there is your standing up sleeping story. We used to get rewarded in SEALs by getting a 2-minute standing nap, which was pretty cool.
Hey guys, go ahead and close your eyes.
Yeah, right. No, it was a huge reward because you were so stupid and silly from cold and fatigue, because you'd be up for days at a time, and they would give you like, here's a 10-minute sleep cycle, like under the boat, and then when you're constantly running and moving, 2 minutes standing up sleep is a great reward. Yeah, and what I was going to point out is when I was mixing those shows and revisiting that time period, I was reflecting on how great it is not to have to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, right. It was a different lifetime or a different lifestyle. A lot of amazing lessons learned, and
absolutely,
some people who hear those stories that you guys share, it's like, what the heck were you thinking? I've gotten that a few times from the fire stuff. Yeah, but it's like, dude, you can't knock it till you try it. And yeah, when I do look back, it's like, yeah. I mean, it's a great story,
mm-hmm.
But it's like, yeah, do I really ever want to go back and do that again? Probably not.
Yeah, I think I would pick like, the Himalayas or something instead, or
like I feel like I should try that. I forget the first time I ever heard this, but like, you know what? It's like it's actually on one of those entrepreneurial shows. Like you think up a crazy idea and market it. Like it's like underwater basket weaving. Like, that sounds challenging. Let's throw on some scuba gear and like go try and weave a basket underwater. Grant, you have the risk of drowning and possible oxygen issues, but other than that, I mean, sounds way better than having to stand for 20 hours watching a fire line, or in your case, being rewarded to get like a couple of minutes of shut eye while standing. Like you're not allowed to sit down, but go ahead and stand up.
Yeah. Well, also deep respect for people that do take those leaps, because it does enrich you in terms of experience. And there's some intangibles about putting yourself through those kind of challenges that translate later on in life.
Well, that's a great point, because what you do, for people's brands and how they grow, and what I do is maybe different, but similar. It's interesting because even to this day, I'm interested to hear your feedback. You don't realize how those lessons are still blooming in different ways and manifesting in different ways as we progress throughout life. Like you think, oh, it's already been a couple of years. Like I served in 2010 and 2011. So it's like, all right, well, it's been 7-8 years, but I'm still seeing them trigger and release different things.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think we evolve through our biggest trials, and it's a lifetime in terms of what they can do for you and what they bring to your life. Well, for instance, the Navy SEAL thing. I never expected to go back and be interviewing Mark Devine, who happened to be in my class, class 170 in Navy SEALs. And here I was almost 20 years later, a little bit over 20 years later, established a brand, taking leaps in terms of putting myself out there in the media. And I did some research and ran across him. And I was like, hey, I think I know this guy. It's amazing like how that relationship, and I've seen this repeatedly as a therapist, how relationships come full circle and there's bigger processes that move us together. And back to your point, we're always taking those past experiences and adding to them and enriching them and growing with them. Part of my story, which previous listeners probably know since I've been on the show, is I didn't graduate BUDS training. I failed out. So part of my own journey has been resolving some of those, some of the reflections on that stuff and making use of it. And I believe I have.
One of the biggest things I remember us chatting, maybe not word for word, but it's funny, right? When you have really good conversations, this is a great little pause. That's one thing I love about podcasting is like the last show I just recorded. At the end, I was like, I hope you had fun like I normally do. And she's like, yeah, and I will tell you. She's like, I've been doing this for a while. She's like, I was an early podcaster. She's like, you really asked me some really good questions. Because again, I don't interview. It's a co-hosting. Like we're having a conversation, but I'm actively listening.
Yeah.
And I'm intrigued and I want to dig into certain things that strike me differently. And so anyway, my point is, it's not a pat on my back, but we're going back to this point, is that as you progress and I progress, we're still hearing things differently as we go throughout life. We're still seeing things continuously different. We can connect them back to past experiences and get that deja vu, but they're going to manifest differently this year versus last year. And quick rewind for the listeners. Your first episode, I believe, was episode 69. It was, April 24th, 2017, we aired it. It was episode 69, Up Hustle, Pioneers of Insight with Jerry Gaura. Then, and actually, what the heck? I got all this technology. Let's do some screen sharing, people, for the YouTube people.
There you go.
So there's Jerry back on episode 69, right?
Clean cut. Look at me.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Because you're rocking the beard today.
I was straight out of corporate right there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm kind of hinting at here, right? Your transition.
Right.
And then you fast forward to April this year, literally almost aired around the same exact day. 100 episodes later, you're episode 169.
Interesting.
Little clean cut there. But doing things differently. To hit there, we're talking about flow state, the growth shitstorm. Remember that?
Right. Yes.
And QH3 podcast launch. So like there was shifts from different podcast brandings. You were still transitioning out of your corporate therapy type of stuff you were integrated in with, getting more entrepreneurial. And now we fast forward to today. I mean, since April. I mean, look how much it's that we're recording this, ladies and gentlemen, on October 5th. So I aired his last show on April 16th, and I know I recorded it at least a week or two in advance of that. So basically 6 months later, let's catch up, right? Like what's been going on in just 6 months, bro?
A lot.
Right?
Always.
This is why this is why I'm enjoying our reconnection.
This is I enjoy going on your show because I like that opportunity to reflect back on the process of change in business. The brand, I think what I've gotten clarity on, first when I stepped out, and this is what we talked about on the first show, is the business was going to be around wellness. I didn't really think I would be scaling the media. I end up falling in love with media, right? Mm-hmm. So then that becomes a premier product in terms of what I'm doing and bringing that out there. And it was focused on illustrating people's stories of overcoming challenges, but more importantly, like where people make the leap to where things get easier. So listeners can really get a sense of, what the tools look like for people. And as I've been evolving, more and more of the creative aspect of podcasting has really been inspiring me. And you may have heard it if you've been listening to my show.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's gone from just purely the wellness piece to really allowing people to dig into the life stories, by kind of blending cinematic storytelling, podcasting, and interviewing. So if you're a fan of podcasting, like Gimlet Media puts out narrative storytelling podcasts and things like that, audio cinema. And my brand has been consistently moving towards the storytelling aspect. Well, the deep dive interviews is the key component, but I love producing stories. So the brand has really expanded in terms of just illustrating the different mindsets that people have in overcoming challenges. So now it's more about life stories and leaps of innovation. So that's been a big shift. I had another show called QH3. That's what we had talked about last time. I had relaunched it, and that was with basically conversations with people who are on the edge of integrative health and healing. I was talking with a lot of those people, and about 6 months into it, I realized I don't need to have the second brand because I can incorporate it all into the stories that I'm utilizing on the Pioneers of Insight.
Congrats.
Right. I was like, I drive myself nuts, by the way, because now it's not about the type of people, it's about life stories. So that allows me kind of carte blanche on people throughout, different professional domains. And I love it.
It was a hard move for me, man. Remember, my tagline for the show is "We fuel your health, business, and lifestyle." And if you look at marketing 101, you're supposed to niche, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to niche down. The further you niche down, and the more successful you'll be. And I'm like, well, number one, I'm not launching a podcast to monetize it, so it's not necessarily a business per se.
Yeah.
And I was like, nobody is talking about these three domains that I'm so passionate about.
Yeah.
And why not bring on guest co-hosts like you, who can play amongst the domains?
Yeah.
And then as I grew the show, it's like, wait a minute, everybody can play amongst these domains. So the cool part of it was, great, I got people coming from the business world. I have people coming from the health world.
Mm-hmm.
I got people coming from like the lifestyle guru, like, meditation world or yogis, whatever world. But in the end, especially if you're online, if you're a lifestyle yogi guru and you're going on a podcast show, you're probably growing your brand. That's more business related, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
sure.
that's the beauty of what you're get the epiphany now too. It's like, man, like it balances. It needs to be balanced. So I'm excited for you. I love it. So
well, I think that's a good conversation for us to have, and it's one that we know pretty intimately.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've talked about it before, but maybe we can just visit it really quickly.
I think it's good because the underlying principle that we didn't tap into that you and I agreed to talk about on this show today, and we never really pre-programmed the format ever, but I was like, you love talking about giving and giving back and giving more. Yeah. And I've converted my business this past year over to a for-purpose business model, trying to hard code a certain percentage to give back, because I'm always donating and giving back and running charity events, but like hard coding it into my business, my brand has been a new metamorphosis. So like you and I Jones off of that.
That's been another part of the transition that I've made too.
Yeah. So, but yeah, let's ball it all up, man. Let's hit it.
Well, let me just quickly pull that thread of which we were talking about before, that whole notion of niching down. I think one of the challenges that I had, and maybe other listeners may have had this challenge too, is when you're niching down, when you don't have a real understanding of what you're doing yet, it can create even more of a barrier to growth, right?
Because you're afraid to maybe go back outside that bubble.
You have a rigid idea of what you're supposed to be doing, but you haven't made any contact with what it is that you're best at, what it is that you're inspired to do at a deeper level, because now you've had the repetitions to understand where you really connect and excel and what inspires you. So that whole notion, I think there's some weakness around it, because you end up having to chip away a lot of the crap as you go forward. And a lot of the crap that you're chipping away, I've found, is some of the notions that have been instilled in you from kind of cookie cutter methods from other people that are trying to sell products to show you how to create a brand, right? You end up letting go a lot of that in terms of your own brand development. And it's not that anybody's doing a wrong thing. That's what we all do. We all want to help. We all want to make it easier for everybody. But here's what I've discovered. There's no shortcuts to creating a business. And it takes
entrepreneurship 101.
Yeah, right. It takes intimate experience with what you're doing. It takes mastery before you really kind of get a sense of what is at the core of what you want to do. And, it's been about 2 years since I launched my brand.
Yeah.
It basically took 2 years for me to get laser focused on where the growing edge is, which is life stories of creatives in every domain.
Well, also, again, phase one or first year or whatever you want to call it, there's also just think about it. You started putting in the reps. I still remember all this. I remember I was motivating you, go for it, put in the reps, keep setting up the escape route, right? The transition plan.
Yep.
And it was a fun conversation because we've all been there. I've been there. And
it is fun.
The part of that transformation is that it doesn't matter if you made the right decision or the wrong decision. At least you're making decisions and you're putting in the reps. This is a common theme that I'm now, it's becoming a new slogan for the show because I realize I catch myself saying it all the time now. Just put in the reps. I can't help it. You and I were joking around about burpees before the show. And then obviously the 8 formats, the SEAL way.
The 8-count bodybuilder.
8-count bodybuilder people. Let's pause on that. Well, let's tie this into what we're talking about, right? Because we could tie this together.
Okay.
So let's go with your 8-count. Why is the 8-count the birth of the burpee?
Because I think this is the 90s, the burpees didn't exist, right? And I think somebody was doing an 8-count bodybuilder, likely in the military, and it was like, we can make this shorter.
Or speed it up, right? Cycling.
We can speed it up. Yeah. We'll take out the extra steps in here and just make it a little bit quicker. I have no idea how it evolved. I should ask Commander Mark Devine on that one.
Yeah.
He may be
it's also really 2 different forms of training. You're doing pauses, pause intervals, holds, and things of that throughout the different positions to make sure you're hitting every single position. Whereas a burpee is just more fluidic and much faster, so you can cycle it different. So it's going to be different heart conditioning, different all that stuff.
That's your skill set. You know exactly what you're talking about. I have no idea. They're both hard, and the 8-count bodybuilders take a little bit longer.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. We were joking around because I remember doing them when I was our fire training. Well, when you're not on a fire, that was what we were doing for our PT, and it was so fun to learn that. Yes.
Did I ever tell you? I'm sorry. I'm gonna bring us back on track. I got the skill set to do that. We still have to talk about giving, and we're gonna finish up this conversation that we're having on the branding. But when I was in training, I actually got to spin this thing called the wheel of misfortune. So when you do things really bad when you're in SEALs training, there's this giant wheel that looks like you're the wheel of what was that show, the game show, Wheel of Fortune? Yeah, Wheel of Fortune. So it's the same thing. They have this big pinwheel that you spin.
Okay.
It makes the noise tick, 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 tick. But on it is not good things. It's only bad things. Right. So I had a training.
Can we call them challenging things, or they're just definitely bad things?
No, they're bad things because they're bad things because you're constantly being asked to exercise about 18 hours a day, and you're constantly in motion. You're averaging like 200 miles, every 3 or 4 days or whatever in terms of running and all that kind of stuff. So when you get extra things tacked on, believe me, it's a bad thing.
Okay.
But one time I spun it, and I had to do 1,500 8-count bodybuilders.
Oh, dear Lord.
For Lieutenant Ryan Zinke, who happens to be in the White House under Trump. He was our instructor at the time.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting story, right? Yeah. All right, so we can leap back
funny, leap back. Anyway, by the way, did they give you a time limit, or was just you got to get 1,500 of them done?
Well, this was at about 4 a.m. This is after we had done an exercise where it was like a 2-mile ocean swim that we had done on a recon exercise, and I had lost a swim buddy. I thought he had been eaten by a shark. Turns out he hadn't been eaten by a shark. He got knocked out in the surf zone, and that's really bad to lose your swim buddy. So that's how I got 1,500.
Yeah, no man left behind.
Yeah. So Zinke, the way he did it was he just pulled the couch out of his office, and he asked me to do the 1,500 8-count bodybuilders, and he watched me do every one. He didn't fall asleep. His eyes were wide open.
He literally laid on the couch, relaxed, and watched you do 1,500 of them.
Yeah, like inches away. Yeah. Why he was.
Oh man, that's some psychological warfare. Wow. Oh wow, I love it.
Yeah, it was brutal. So let's go back to evolution. So we talked a little bit about the evolution of what it looks like to grow a brand. I've been
putting in the reps and making mistakes
before you really get a clear notion of what you want to do. I think, and I don't even think that's a fair way to frame it. I feel a good business is always evolving, right? In terms of if you want to keep pace with change yourself personally, in terms of your own growth, but pace of change in terms of
you can't become stagnant,
right? And all that stuff. So the second aspect that I've been changing in is the giving piece, like you were referring to in your own business.
That's some powerful evolution, right?
I think it is, and I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Well, here's the reason I really kind of wanted to make that a major part of our brand. First off, I'm a socially conscious kind of person. I want to align with socially conscious businesses and people like you. But secondly, I think there's a tricky life principle that I've come across, which is when there's growth that's happening, but there's not big leaps that are happening. I found that giving often produces some amazing results I didn't expect. And I'm not doing it for this. And I'm not talking about like, well, I need to give so I can get something really great from out of life or to
no, I mean, work. That is a side effect. It does
for sure. I think
it's process.
It's nice to want, it's nice to be open to a good outcome, but I've found that it's been a really good thing when I'm in need of some sort of extra step. And I'll give you a clear example of what I'm talking about, because I'm not making any freaking sense right now.
No, I'm following you, but for the audience, let's give them an example.
Yeah, so I'll give you a clear example.
People need to understand how valuable this is.
Yeah, right. So my business has been steadily growing in terms of brand influence, and there's a lot of people that really like the direction and want to become a part of it. But one of the challenges I've had as a business owner is I'm scaling a media brand, and there's also a wellness component to what I do. So I work with people on the wellness side, whether that be through coaching or therapy. And I'm really kind of at this phase of my growth, keying in on creatives and creative entrepreneurs. So there's been some challenges for me in terms of how I want to price things and what I want to put priorities on as a business owner in terms of pricing models. And I found myself doing this kind of thing, like, well, I'm not sure I want to see this client because they're not at the level that at the financial target that I'm looking for, right?
In terms maybe of like a pricing tier or
like a pricing tier. Yeah. So I was having to make decisions about basically stepping forward to be of service to people, and it started to be a grind. I'll be honest. And it was presenting some challenges to me in terms of like just typical things like guilt, like basic emotions and things like that. So it was about a 2-month period where I was really trying to figure out how I wanted to manage that. And I said, you know what I think I'm missing out on right now? And that is just the opportunity to give for giving's sake. Because being in the business mode, I think I find myself constantly assessing what makes sense in terms of the growth of my business, and how do I stay healthy in that process. However, in the middle, there's this other space, which is forget about the outcome. This isn't about any sort of outcome. Forget about the long term. What can I do right now to offer something that represents the best of myself? So I realized my brand was a little bit selfish. It's hard for me to say, but it's true.
It's like a word that I've had to go through a couple of times.
Yeah. There's a difference between, I think, selfish and doing things to help yourself. And I found I was kind of moving towards selfish a little bit.
Well, you have to, one thing I've learned is there's no such thing as, what's a quote? There's no such thing as a poor a philanthropist. You know, it's like, okay, you want to be giving. Like my whole thing of embracing financial success was always a struggle because I didn't grow up with a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And
yeah, me too.
Like, listen, the more success or financial freedom you can create, and it doesn't, you know, this doesn't mean you have to be a millionaire. Like, you know, if you live debt free and you have no bills and you continuously grow your income streams through things that bring you joy, that allows you the more flexibility to give back and do more things. Right. So this has been part of my growth. I'm with you. It's,
well, it creates kind of a mousetrap, right? Like
it does. Yeah.
So I was in that trap a little bit, and I basically just took a big breath one day, and I'm like, look, just forget about the outcomes, forget about where I'm trying to track financially right now. What can I really do that's going to allow me to take a breath as not just a business owner, but as a person, and really create some value for my brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a son who happens to have Down syndrome. I've talked about that before in the show, and I decided that any revenue that I'm going to make on the media end, that I'm going to give 30% of that to launching a peer mentorship program for Down syndrome youth.
Mm-hmm.
So I created a GoFundMe campaign. It's called Miracle to Me.
I joined in on it.
Yes, you did. You were one of the first people to actually give. And I
think I was the first. I like being the first.
Yeah, you were. I think you were the first. And I still haven't done a media campaign around it. The concept was just to have a channel that's going to allow people to know that this is what my business is connected to.
We should do a joint Facebook live session. You can do that. I mean, from iPhone to iPhone easily too, but you don't have to be in your office, but you can go Facebook live on each other's feeds.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't see you know the Facebook stuff. I'd stay away from Facebook. I haven't done much of it.
I know, but it's like I have a bigger following on Facebook in my personal friends list than I have likes on my Live the
Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So let me just finish that up real quick.
Yeah.
So 33% of everything that I do in terms of media is going to go towards launching a peer mentorship program for Down syndrome.
Awesome.
Which is basically pairing up pioneering Down syndrome youth that are out there in jobs and corporates or acting or things like that with the younger children that are in the school systems. Because the model right now basically is children with Down syndrome youth are paired up with basically adults, typicals, right? And that
crazy alignment, by the way. They're so different from life experiences and such.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no generational bridge. So what I'm trying to do is create a program that allows a generational peer mentorship bridge to move forward. And then also to help placement with putting young Down syndrome adults and adolescents into mentorship opportunities in real companies with more than just kind of like mascot roles, but there's real packages attached and real rewards and real positions. So that's the big picture vision behind it. And as I go forward from here on out, 33% of everything I make just in the media aspect is going to go through that.
See, that's, I think you and I talked a little bit about it, but I every year, past couple of years, I've gone out to an event called Thrive, Make Money Matter. Yeah. The first year I went was their second year doing it. That was in San Diego. This year and last year, they hosted it back in Vegas, like they did their very first year. But it's a powerful event that just brings together world-class entrepreneurs and speakers. And the whole message behind that event is to teach how to make your money matter. It's okay to embrace financial success. There's people there from real estate backgrounds, nutritional, entrepreneurial successful companies to startups. I mean, it doesn't matter. Jack Canfield has spoken there, all kinds of other world-class influencers. The long story short is that the big theme is bringing people together under the common message of teaching you that as you grow more successful, if you truly want to push your success through the top and truly want to create limitless opportunity, is the sooner you can align yourself to create a for-purpose business model, which is what you've done, which is what I've done, is it just changes the whole world. Because now it's like, wait a minute, when you look at your percentages, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm scaled to increase my profits by 50% this year. Well, if you've hard-coded, let's say a 10% giving, right? So that means I'm growing my company by 50%. And that means that increases my giving by a 10% ratio. Do the math, right? So it's like, whoa. So you're aligning your success and your growth, and it pulls the for purpose right along with it. And you're fueling that fire at a whole different psychological level. And when you put that into your branding, it helps people see that, dude, you're a bigger thinker. This isn't just about profits. It's like, dude, if I become more successful and I help other people become more successful, we all together are creating more purposeful results along that way.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying. It's alignment. And I would also call it balance for me, because it's not about putting out a brand that's attached to a charitable piece. You know, I don't want to just, kind of showboat that and make it about that. It's more, it's really honestly about, I think for me, it's about balance in the business. Like, business isn't everything in life. It's for me to move forward, to give to people, to give to create opportunities for people to take big leaps in their lives. That's really important to me. It's not really about how much money I'm giving to creating a mentorship program like I want to create. It's really about just that honest act. And I spend so much time in knee deep in my business and doing what I do, that knowing that that's there, it creates a deeper sense of well-being for me. And I operate, like you're saying, at a different level. And if I can do some good in the process, and if everybody could do that, that's great. But I don't expect that out of anybody. It made sense for me at that time.
It's funny because I was scared at first, right? It's like, as you're trying to grow and you're doing the metamorphosis, man, it's like you're looking at the dollars and you're looking at the bills, or if you have bills or not, and you're trying to make everything work. And then all of a sudden you make that commitment to saying, wait a minute, I'm going to hard code. In the beginning, I only did 1%, right? And then I've increased it like every, 6 months. I was like, okay, let's go to 5, right? Let's go. Master plan is like, wow, with no debt and, financial freedom. Like, what if, as you've done 33% of just your media division? Like, that's a major commitment.
Yeah.
But that also now allows you more reason to grow success of that division. Cause dude, there's a big chunk that can start fueling that fire. And again, once you hard code that percentage away, like I even have a separate online bank account. So when the income hits my primary business account, there's a transfer happening every single week. And that money goes away. I never see it again. It goes into that account until I'm ready to do I actually did a big donation. I ran my annual fallen firefighters to honor the Hot Shots memories from Arizona. I do that workout every single year. And this year, a current hot shot, unfortunately, had lost his life. It wasn't even due to the fire per se. It was, unfortunately, he was near a bad tree in a wilderness situation, and part of the tree, they call them widowmakers, snapped loose, came down, hit him in the head, and killed him.
Yeah, that happens.
And he left behind his fiance, not even married yet, pregnant with their first child. So there's now actually a Hot Shots Association, which I was very excited. They didn't exist when I was doing this. So there's now they've created a worldwide Hot Shots Association, and they put out on social media and everything else. Because I still follow all the feeds, and I was like, whoa. And I had no game plan on where the funds this year from the t-shirts I had made and the workouts we did, like where was it going to go? And over the past 2 years, I started actually supporting local fire departments, the volunteer fire departments. And I normally do that. But when I see something like that pop up, it's real, it's happening, it's totally tied to my purpose. I was like, boom. And then I didn't sell as many shirts as I was hoping to, and I didn't like the funds I raised, but I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I have my for purpose account. There's hundreds of dollars sitting in that account. So did the transfer, just jacked the donation up, all went right into that fund that we were putting together for his fiance. That felt so good. Like I have chills and goosebumps right now because it's like,
I know you can hear in terms of our conversation how it just changed around giving.
I was like, like, okay. I mean, I'm still building this event. It's a small grassroots event. So I was hoping to do better. Okay. You could good and bad years. That's like, wait, I've got more money sitting here. It's all for this reason. Yeah. How cool to be able to do that.
I don't want to get woo-woo, but I'm going to get a little bit. So
that comes with it.
Yeah, no. So there's the deeper principle that I was alluding to earlier, like there's certain things that you do in life that you can't really make sense of, but you see major changes that kind of happen, or you use the word manifest before, that follow taking acts like this. So one of the things I didn't talk about is managing debt in business, right? And when you're doing that sort of thing, because I still consider myself in the startup phase.
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly, and I'm struggling with where money's coming in, where it's going out, trying to find a good balance for that. And this was a central part of the conversation about wiring into my business model, giving. Mm-hmm. When I was when I was in the worst position to be thinking about giving, it's where it came up. And I'm not exactly sure why. I just had insight into what my business was doing, and it was all about just the business growing. And I was like, you know what? I'm not in the position to do this. I have more debt than I know what to do with right now to move to my next stage of growth. But I'm going to create this anyway. And I'm telling you, Scott, like immediately things began to change in terms of the quality of clients that were coming in, the quality of guests that have been showing up for my brand, and just a million tiny things that I can't really detail in here because I'll be putting people to sleep. But there is something to be said, and kind of the perennial religions kind of have that built into every giving is part of every perennial religion. That tithing they call it.
Yeah, it's a must.
I think there's something to it.
Oh, it totally is. I don't care whether it's a woo-woo factor, if it's the universe's energy balance, if it's your flow state, if you're into the religions, it's your faith, your religion. What? I don't care. In the end, it feels good. It feels right. And then you start attracting the right people and the right entities who also get that.
Well, I think it's about relationships.
Oh God, yeah.
It's what meaning like a business is just another relationship. So I imagine my business is, a potential partner, just like, if it was a marriage, if you're in a marriage, you want a partner that's conscious enough to offer something to give with no expectation of a return. That makes for a good relationship. So I think when you do that in a business, good things happen, just like it would in any other relationship. Now, if you want me to get into the physics of that, I can't do that. I can't quantify exactly what's happening there, but I have seen results consistently at different points of my life. And at this period, it's definitely created a shift.
Well, and since we've been talking about it, this is a powerful screen share we need to be launching here. So
there's my little guy.
There's your little guy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sharing this. So if you're hearing this, I don't care if you're not a big YouTuber or not, go to livethefield.com, click on this episode once it airs for Jerry Gaura. And I'm going to link everything. The GoFundMe page will be linked in the show notes. You can follow him on LinkedIn too. He shares it in his post there. I'm going to be cross-sharing and tweeting it. But, he's launched it. It's official. It's not BS. Like you see Jerry there with his son. You got some other pictures of your son. You launched the GoFundMe. That's right there. The biggest thing is committing, right? I'm putting myself out there. We're going to make it happen. And even if you don't crush it on GoFundMe, the fact that you've hard-coded your business now, it's like...
Yeah, this is just kind of a conduit to let people know that it's happening.
It's another portal if people want to feel like they want to be a part of the same mission.
Right. Yeah, and that's been another thing that I've been finding on the other side of this is now that I've taken this step just to make it a reality, conversations with other charitable organizations locally have really been ramping up, and awareness around this has been growing, which has been fun. There's a woman in the West Hartford area where I live in Connecticut that's starting a cafe that's run by all special needs children. And Gus is 4 now, so he can't quite go to work as a waiter yet. But
he could be a go-getter. You never know.
No, but basically these conversations of other socially conscious business people are stepping forward. And some of these people are related with some of the state organizations here. And so it's some exciting things are happening around it. I'm excited.
Well, and I saw you post about this organization up by you, the Connecticut Buddy Walk. That was on September 8th.
Right.
And you got Gus's Nomies there. What's that all about?
So every year, the families of the very lucky parents that have children with Down syndrome all come together for an event called the Buddy Walk. And it's the state puts it on, and it's to raise money and awareness of Down syndrome, and to start to promote inclusion in the school systems and in the businesses in the state, and basically just to celebrate what it's like to be related and to have a family member who has somebody with Down syndrome. I think the cultural perception around Down syndrome is changing, luckily, because of this era of media that we're in, that there's been more exposure and people get to see how wonderful people they are.
Yeah.
So, that's happening on a statewide level here in Connecticut with the Buddy Walk. They do great things. And I think they raised over $200,000 this year, which was great.
Well, I mean, and this is your campaign page, right? For Gus?
Yeah,
right?
we did.
You guys exceeded your goal. You hit 111%. You set a goal to go at least 1,500, hit the 1,675.
Yeah.
So, which is great, right? Because you got the GoFundMe, but then you went ahead and again, let's really contribute to these guys,
right?
And exceeded your goal. Because I've done stuff like this for years, like multiple sclerosis cycling events, everything else, and I will say there's such a wide breadth of opportunity to give. So there's really just align with what aligns with you. I mean, if you have a child with Down syndrome, clearly you're probably going to support programs like this. If you have a family member with multiple sclerosis, you're probably going to lean that way. Or you got people like me where if I got it in the budget, and I know people like you, it's like, oh, I'll throw a little his way, I'll throw a little their way, I'll spread the love.
Well, it changes things. And I'll go back to the concept of relationships if you have a cause that is dear to your heart, or if it's not even a cause, it's something that you're interested in terms of promoting the health of community or people or the planet, whatever it happens to be. When you take a step like that, the change and the subtleties around the changes that happen personally do wonderful things for you in terms of the relationships that, meeting new people, in terms of the way that you're relating to yourself, in terms of taking away your focus and attention away from things that might not necessarily be as important. I mean, just everything starts to shift when you make it a reality. And even something as simple as like a GoFundMe page, like you're saying, I think it's just that principle of seeing yourself take right actions that does the wonderful things.
I got to tell you, I mean, let's tie this directly back to business, right? Let's look at sales and marketing in general.
Yeah.
I've been in sales a long time. Before fire, after fire, I help people grow their brands now. I still sit down and do business development meetings and close deals for my biggest client. So the biggest thing that I coach some of their salespeople on is I don't talk business. Like when I sit down with these buyers and these people that are with these big companies, I'm reconnecting on past conversations. Like I'm listening, I'm finding out, do any of their kids have any conditions? Do they like golf or me? Like I'm a mountain biker and a cyclist and a skier. Like I'm looking for common ground. But also when you do things like this, and then they ask in return, like, well, what have you been up to? Well, if you don't mind me sharing, I'm seriously excited about this. And I'm not asking them to donate. It's not about that. It's just, you have amazing, unique stories that they were not expecting.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, because what you're talking about is a principle of moving from being in a relationship for a transaction's sake to reciprocation. And there's a different level of, in terms of a quality of connection that comes from real relationships that are about reciprocation.
And that's the power of good podcasting too, right? Is this act of listening. Like we're having a two-way conversation.
Right.
That's what the most successful sales professionals out there will coach you on and teach you, is that it can't be transactional. It can't.
Yeah. And to bring that briefly to my business, that's been part of the evolution that I've had in my business. Is even though I'm a therapist and even though I'm a coach and I facilitate groups and workshops and things like that, and there's a certain level of service that's wired into it, it's still transactional. It still can become transactional when it becomes about the service. So the way I've been evolving in terms of my brand, especially around the media, is I've discovered one of the most powerful ways that you can really offer something to somebody is to open up stories. And that's through vulnerable storytelling. Vulnerable storytelling allows people to connect and to share emotionally. And that's a reciprocation process, right? That does wonderful things. So that's been kind of, that's been a part of the process, my process of evolution too, is, and I think we're all kind of hardwired to do the transactional stuff. That's just part of participating in culture. But what you're talking about is kind of bringing wisdom into business, which is that's one of the benefits of this, podcasting. That's one of the benefits of socially conscious business owners getting out there and sharing messages around what it means to create value in the world.
And it takes people like us sharing that messaging, because I had to learn this from other people too, right? This I didn't know this in the beginning.
No, nobody does it. That's the repetition.
And you and I are still figuring it out.
Yeah, I'm only 47. I'm 48 now.
Yeah, I'm 41. So there you go. We're in the same decade now.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of learning to do.
And then the learning never stops. I had to remind somebody about this the other day. I'm still guilty of every once in a while saying, "Oh, I'm not perfect," right? I now hate that statement. Hate's a strong word, because there is no such thing as perfection. No. And we need to be making the mistakes, which is how we learn. We need to be just taking action and surrounding ourselves with people who may know a few more things than we do, right? Yeah. Going back to the product, your environment and everything else. I think so many people create that paralysis by analysis because they're trying to do everything right. And in my case, I think we've shared that today, is that there is still no perfect action. There's actually perfection in the imperfect actions.
What's even more bizarre about this, and I love what you're talking about right here, is I think I've gotten some clarity on this as a coach, working with other people, but also as an independent business owner and just a person who's growing in life. That one answer for one person is not an answer for another. And that scales on every level in terms of strategies, meaning we don't even know why certain things work for some people.
Nope.
We have no idea. You can take person A, person B, person C. They're all doing the same things and getting completely different results. And, we have this kind of pattern in culture of creating systems and trying to apply it to each and every person. But there is something magical about living that appears to be about learning. That you can't just assume that because something works perfectly for one person, it's going to work for another. Why that is, I'm not sure. It appears to be there's kind of like different learning lessons that we all have to manage and all that kind of stuff. It's just a pretty interesting thing, I think. And
it is. And the people that are seen as the odd people out and the real weirdos are usually the ones creating some of the most drastic shifts and changes in our world today.
Well, you think of all the big
look at Tesla
owners,
right?
Yeah, Tesla, Airbnb,
right?
It's always the creative leap, and the creative leap comes from making no assumptions about what's going to work.
Yep.
From vulnerability, it comes from that big piece, not assuming. Of course, it's good to have some rails, to kind of some strategies to start to move with. But I think I've found this in my own business journey, and you've maybe have found the same thing. I don't know. That the rails are just kind of giving you permission to lean in and do the real learning because everything gets undone, and you have to create something that's authentic for you that works. Meaning my brand is going to suck until it's absolutely authentic to what I'm doing, right? Like to who I am and what I want to share with the world. And people pick up on that,
Yeah.
Especially the Gen Yers and the new generations, they can pick up on BS like nobody's business.
Oh, I love the new millennial generation. There's so many people who criticize it, and obviously that's a big part of my target audience, because I think it's our responsibility to give back and help guide them. And now, granted, I do have to crack on them. Some millennials, not all, some. Again, guys, you got to put in the work. Okay, you can't just expect everything to happen. Sorry. But that aside,
I wonder about
I love
that
the fact
sometimes.
What's that?
I wonder about that sometimes, and this is going to sound like really weird from a person that came through Navy SEALs and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Which is it always effort that gets you the result?
Oh no, I'm not saying that. I agree with that. It's a very good. I'm glad
I
you.
believe in the mindset. I believe in the mindset behind
Yes.
moving through struggle. I believe that does wonderful things in terms of character and perspective and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, and
But
that's
I
a
don't
good
know
full
if it's a
circle.
truth. I
The
don't know.
millennial generation, their mindsets that they want to do something purposeful. They want to do something greater in the world. That's for a lot that I've met and I know and I've worked with. I love that because it's going back to that giving theme, right? But we still need to direct it, and they still have to be willing to put into work and make the mistakes along the path, and it's okay, right? Like you might not have the perfect job right now, but at least it's a job, right? We might not, you and I might not have started our business if we didn't have the jobby job or the thing to get us to where we're at. And then we started putting in the part-time reps or the part-time side hustles until we could start building the income streams to justify the next big step. Like it's a process. But I agree. As far as the mindset is huge, mindset's huge. The issues with my generation, the Gen X's, the Ys, et cetera, is that there's still so much. I don't want to call it archaic thought. Maybe you got a better way to put it, but generationally, things were brought up differently, right?
Yeah, no, I think even our generation, Gen X, it's a really strong part of our message, which is let's put it into an anecdote that everybody can relate to or a saying. The struggle is real.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
it. Basically, meaning like, look, you have to be willing to lean in, to fall down, and to get up again, to be stretched and to grow.
Yeah.
Yes, that's one truth, but there's also plenty of people that have managed to click into pretty powerfully comfortable lifestyles that haven't struggled and maybe didn't have it all. So there doesn't appear to be one truth in life, which I think is pretty amazing. And maybe that's what we're learning with this new generation that's coming. Personally, I value people that are willing to like say, here's a wall and I'm going to run through it. I don't care if it's there. I personally can relate to that myself. And I think there's great value in that. And I'm also open to seeing that there are other ways of approaching life that produce results. And, I think that's what you hear in terms of a cultural conversation with, Gen Xers and Gen Yers is these kind of differences in terms of opinions on what's the way to do things. Well, sometimes letting go of resistance and just waiting, being patient and waiting does create some opportunities. And now, personally, I'm not that guy.
And
I'm like, no, I would rather be moving forward. I'd rather be stretched. I would rather have the awareness of understanding what I'm letting go and then waiting for something to come around for a full circle for me to just step into it.
True. Yeah. I mean, again, full circle back to the millennials again. I mean, I love the fact that it seems like there is no limit to their vision and they see the abundance and the capacity, and they're growing up in a generation where there's such a technological abundance.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
can you imagine what it's
I was excited when I got a pager.
Yeah, right.
And I think the only profession that still uses pagers to this day is the medical field. Because of the frequencies and all that stuff.
It is amazing how far we've come so fast. It's
like
mind-boggling.
As a millennial, not even a millennial, you could literally there's entrepreneurs, kids that aren't even legally allowed to do stuff as an entrepreneur, but they're already generating income because their parents are cool. And they've helped make sure they can set the foundation. These kids,
there's millionaire kids.
Yeah. It's like, so what, like once you hit 18, like you're literally already a multimillionaire. Like how awesome.
Yeah, well, these weren't even options. These weren't even in our sphere of thought when we were kids. Like I was thinking about baseball and I was thinking about what I was going to be doing when I got out of high school. The idea of being an entrepreneur that was scaling companies and making millions while I was in middle school, that wasn't even on the plate.
Like the TV show Shark Tank. And you see these little kids, not obviously not as young as your son, but it's like coming on, holding hands with their parents,
right?
And they're pitching their company, and the parents are just standing there just in case. Like,
there's a kid even in the who's a Down syndrome young adult. I think he's 19 years old. John Socks, I think.
Oh yeah. Yes.
He's got a multi-million-dollar brand. He's selling socks for crying out loud. Like it's a different world. And I think part of that, to bring the conversation and make it useful for the listener is I think it's standing on the backs of some of what our older, our previous generations have done.
Mm-hmm.
Our fathers and our mothers, they lived in a pretty gritty era, in terms of the 50s and the 60s, in terms of doing some pretty difficult work. And then,
yeah, they were impacted by different social issues that obviously directed their thought processes. So,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I mean, but to give us the opportunity to live basically in an idea economy, which is pretty exciting right now. And I'm
oh, and by
excited.
the way, since this is Down Syndrome Month, boom, it is John's Crazy
There
Socks
you go.
.com.
Yeah.
And right there, they've got a pair of socks right there, the symbolic symbol for Down syndrome. Sorry, that's autism. My bad. But they have all these different themes of socks. They got breast cancer socks, autism socks, not just cause socks, but it's cool to see they have socks for that are symbolically tied to different causes. But anyway, it's just cool. And this was like created by a kid and his dad.
Well, that's what I want to do with my mentorship program is, the kids that are the 4-year-olds like I have a son who's 4 years old. Look, there's a gentleman named John who has Down syndrome who's established a multi-million-dollar sock company. Like, he should be the one reaching out to mentor, the children that are moving forward.
Yeah, how cool is this one? Like Down syndrome superhero girl socks.
Yeah, he's got some cool stuff. He's got some funky stuff going on.
I haven't been on the site. I'm going to leave this up for later. I'm going to go dig into this because that's like a new style thing. I've noticed. Like I just picked up another new suit so I can use it for my wedding next year. But I have to go pick it up tomorrow. And I was like, oh, you know what? I noticed everybody's wearing like fun socks again.
Yeah, it's happening.
So I feel like I need to go. If I'm going to spend money, let's full circle this, right? I've grown as much respect as possible for purpose businesses. So I try and spend my money with for purpose businesses. So there's another little hack. Maybe you haven't been able to unlock the percentages yet, but why not at least take an extra 5-10 minutes, go online, Google a company and see if there's companies that are tied to a purpose and then spend your money with them.
Well, I think there's value in that because those are people that we've talked about the principle of building healthy relationships and good relationships. Those are the people that are doing it practically in business, and they're taking steps to really build healthy cultures. Our brand, both on the media side and also on the wellness side, only works with socially conscious businesses and people. And that was a decision by me, and it's been hard. I'll be honest, because there's been people that have come forward that wanted media work done, and also, on the coaching side, that the scope of their business isn't necessarily one that's doing any sort of good for culture or for people, that I've had to make decisions on. And I'm not exactly at a place where I would like to be in terms of my mark, financially, and what my 5-year plan looks like. But what you're saying is, it looks like a sacrifice, but it's a short-term sacrifice that I believe pays off because everybody's getting healthier in the process, and that will come around, hopefully, in terms of the health of my business. Yeah. What do you think I could offer to help your listeners here? We've been all over the place.
Well, we have, but you and I both have done it. I think I would like to say, pat our own backs. We have been really aggressively bringing it back, circling it up, and wrapping them up. And actually, it's good timing because we do have to bring this show to a close. But I think before we hit the final words like we normally do, one thing that I appreciated about you recently did, not just obviously what you've done for your son and aligning yourself with a for-purpose model, because it is powerful, is that you created this cool little networking circle of like overlap of influencers. Now, obviously not everybody's going to make sense for this, but you're still growing that, right?
Yeah, it's called the Story Circle.
There you go. So let's catch our listeners out, guys. If you hung out with us this long, thank you.
Yeah. Good for you.
But this is cool. This is cool because even if you're that small part-time hustling entrepreneur that's listening to this show, or you may know somebody that could possibly make sense for this inner circle of influence, this is the power of business, right? You can't beat the power of word of mouth.
Yeah.
It's free sales and marketing 101. And that's what I like about these inner circles that are created, which you have done. So I just want to give you an opportunity to help educate us on that and maybe even grow that some more.
Well, I think it goes back to the concept of relationships. Basically, I created a networking model around my media work. I was looking for ways to benefit not just my growth, but the growth of all those people that I've been associated with. And, of course, you want to think things to make sense financially. So what I realized is, my show was evolving to reach out to those people that have all overcome some major challenge on the road to success. And in the process, become more conscious and more aware people, and just generally more, good people. But beyond just good, they have real skill sets and the insights to share to really inspire people's growth, both financially, spiritually, and emotionally. So I said, well, why don't I start reaching out to each and every one of these people in my network and offer them mentorship opportunities, because essentially their businesses are mentoring other people, whether they would, qualify it as that or not, or use that language or not. So I reach out to every one of the people that I work with, and they become mentors within the 2E Media Network, which means that if a listener likes the show and likes the story, and I don't know how many people are here have heard my show. There's no pitches on my show. It's just people sharing their stories, how they've overcome challenges. But for the listeners that really connect to these people, some of them are New York Times bestsellers. Some of them are coaches that are scaling multi-million-dollar brands, or they're CEOs with multi-million-dollar socially conscious brands, or whatever. Or people like Scott that are doing wonderful things in terms of the media end, in terms of their skill set with sales,
and just being a crazy obsessed health and fitness junkie,
or artists, or artists like I have NPR storytellers and people like that come forward that have powerful messages to share. So if anybody wants to work with these people in terms of mentorships, we have a model where I facilitate a mentorship through the media work for the listeners that feel like they could really get something out of it. So everybody wins, basically.
Yep.
I think the underlying principle, and we could probably go out on this, is I feel that I only want to work with people that have the insights that come through overcoming some major challenge, to bring it back to our conversation about the millennials. I really value those people that have the insights and the experience, and not just a message that's manufactured and saying, here's what I can do for you. No, like, here's a real experience. Oh, by the way, I fought forest fires after leaving a very comfortable job in corporate, and I survived, and I figured out how to scale that into a brand that's helping people, like Scott. Those are real people that have real tools, rather than just the message. And I think that's important.
People like Devine.
Or like people like Mark Devine. Like right now, and everybody here who's listening to this show is probably perfectly aware of what the business culture looks like. Everybody is aware that story sells. But here's the problem. People are manufacturing stories to sell.
Yes.
And that's a
whole other show.
And I'm telling you, that's the whole key to our brand, is like, I'm doing the legwork to really align with authentic people that have overcome legit challenges, and I'm aligning with those businesses to grow with them. We're creating a network that's growing together. And I believe in that. So that's the whole story circle model.
No, actually, I love that. And that totally fills in our whole final words theme, because you hit it. I mean, that's the takeaway for the listeners, is, at least for Jerry, right? And 2E Media and his podcast and everything else he's doing. And if you're intrigued by this, inner circle, reach out. But the point here is, don't manufacture a story. And if maybe you're not former military or a former firefighter, or that doesn't mean you can't find other people to connect with. It's just, at least when you do create your brand, make sure it's your story.
Your story.
Don't fabricate it.
Look, we've all overcome challenges, and it doesn't have to be, like I lost a leg on a hike, in Alaska. No, it doesn't have to be anything like that. The key is aligning to people that relate to who and what you are. And that's what really matters. That's what allows people to grow together. And I think when it's working right, and it's just, things go well. And it's scary. I think it's scary to be honest about your story.
It is, because
for everybody, no matter
what.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And I've, like you, I've interviewed a lot of people, and I've gotten to hear some harrowing stories, and I've gotten to hear people that don't have major challenge, like wipeout stories, but they have stories of overcoming adversity, and we all have the adversity that we need in our lives. But we all get what we need, and being able to share that openly and vulnerably is scary for everybody, no matter what the challenge is. So that does something. I'm not sure exactly how that magic works. That's one of those kind of physics scenarios that I could never answer, like to quantify, but there is some magic that happens when people align through common experience.
I agree. Well, listen, hang tight. I want to give you probably goodbye off the air, but ladies and gentlemen, and actually while I'm closing it out for the YouTube watchers, as I close this show out, we're going to do a last share here. GoFundMe, people. When you go on there, the name of his is actually Mentorships for Down Syndrome Youth. But I'll have this linked in the show notes.
It's called Miracle to Me. Yep.
There you go. Miracle to Me is in the graphic right there. Miracle to Me. So, you can just go to GoFundMe.com and just search for it, but I'll have the link in the show notes because we're good like that. So as I'm closing this out, we'll close out on that screen share because this is October 2018. And we are trying to increase, obviously, October is big for breast cancer awareness too, but Down syndrome is a huge thing to create more awareness on, more knowledge on, and create more support for. So again, ladies and gentlemen, that was Jerry Gaura, and he is once again another repeat co-host, bringing the fuel to the fire, fueling your health, fueling your business, fueling your lifestyle. And again, if you tied yourself to anything he mentioned today, make sure you check him out online, follow him on LinkedIn. I'll have everything linked, his site, everything. But again, we're here to fuel your health, business, lifestyle, people. We did that today. We've got some for-purpose missions going on. If you feel tied to it, go support them. And thanks for tuning in.
Hey, can I give one pitch before we just totally close it out?
Well, yeah, and let me scrap screen sharing here. There you go. Boom. Let's hit it out. Let's officially close it out.
So on episode 25, we're making a shift to move to series storytelling, which is I'm going to go out and I'm just going to focus on the life stories of different people. So I'm going to find tech wizards. I'm going to find people that I'm calling beyonders, which are people that are pushing the boundaries on what we believe is possible in all areas of culture. So I'm going to be creating series, they could be up to, they're going to be ongoing series that are running. So people will have more control over what they listen to, whether if they like CEO stories or if they like founder stories, if they like adventurers and explorers. So check it out. I'm excited about it. It's going to be a big leap for us.
You got to release a blog article on that so we can understand that even more, and that'll draw more people to your new content. So again, everybody's got different styles. Some people don't like long format like this show. Some people want the short, quick, and skinny. So, and you break it up into series, and it gives you something to get obsessed with. So.
Well, it's cinematic storytelling. So it's basically like, listening to a movie for the ears, the show. So I figured that gives listeners more control. Because there's people out there who listen to your show, they're just like, I just want to hear the health stuff. Right? There's occasionally those people that are like, who's this guy Jerry and what's he talking about? That allows people some choices in terms of what they listen to.
There it is. And again, actually, as I close the show, ladies and gentlemen, I did split that up. So if you ever wanted to go to livethefuel.com and you click on podcasts, you'll see that I've actually chunked out all the primary themes. So there's actually a health section, a business section, and a lifestyle section. Yep. So
you know what you're doing.
I'm trying to do the work for you, and I respect it. It's okay. But I don't care. You better have listened to the show today. So if you lasted this long, thanks again. Follow Jerry online. If you feel like you want to give, please support Miracle to Me. That's my shout out to you, my loyal listeners. Let's give back. Let's find more purpose in our lives and help others do it along the way. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And again, we're fueling your health, business, lifestyle. Talk to you next.